Thank you everyone for joining us today at our webinar, Interview Tips for New Canadians. This is presented by Achēv Career Loans, and we've got a wonderful show for you today. Before we begin, I do want to take a moment to make a land acknowledgement. Achēv acknowledges that the land on which we live, work, and gather, even virtually, is part of the treaty lands and territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit. The land on which the region of Peel and the regional municipality of Halton operates is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations and Métis people. We're grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land, and by doing so, give our respect to its first inhabitants. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and cultures and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. Now, anytime during today's webinar, feel free to interact with us, whether that be me or the guest speakers. Use the chat if you just want to say hi. We do have an ongoing Q&A feature. So anytime during today's webinar, you have a question, type it in the Q&A section, and we will answer your questions at the end of the presentation. In addition, we also have a survey. Now, you don't need to copy this URL down, but we will send you a survey after the webinar. It takes 1 minute, and we'll really appreciate it if you can just let us know about your opinions and thoughts about today's webinar. It'll make our future webinars that much greater. Now, who is here today? My name is Gavin. I'm the content developer of the Career Loans program. And our two guest speakers today are Meenakshi Lamba, Newcomer Employment Lead from Immigrant Services Calgary, and Griffin Anderson, who is an Employment Counselor of the Saskatoon Open Door Society. I'm also joined by my colleague, Venus Shafay, who is an Information and Financial Counselor with the Career Loans program. Before we jump into today's presentation, though, there is a short video about the Career Loans program, which I think will explain how we can help skilled newcomers in Alberta and Saskatchewan.
I'm Rianne Mendoza, and I came to Canada from the Philippines last year in November.
Hello, my name is Ifoma. I came to Canada June 2019.
My desired occupation in Canada is a privacy lawyer.
And my desire is to work as a medical doctor in Canada. The major challenge that I was facing was financial.
I don't have the sufficient resources in order for me to enroll.
I used part of the money that I got from Career Loans to register for the first part of the exam.
I was able to enroll in the training programs to becoming a privacy professional,
To buy a mini laptop that I would use to prepare for the exams.
to purchase all the required texts.
Ever since I applied to Career Loans, I can say that my career outlook is definitely brighter.
I will also be getting my certification for Asia.
Because I've gotten the assistance that I needed. I've been able to register for the exams.
I am now more prepared to become a privacy professional in Canada.
Things are looking brighter. Yeah, I just feel like, I'm getting closer to my goal.
And thanks to Career Loans, I am now more confident and in my way towards my journey of becoming a privacy professional here in Canada.
All right, as for today's schedule, I'll first be introducing our guest speakers, who will then be going off into two separate presentations. Meenakshi will be talking about the pre-interview tips, and Griffin will be speaking about the during interview tips. Afterwards, Venus will come on and talk about how career loans can help. And then we will have the Q&A session. So at that time, we'll answer all your questions. But again, anytime during today's presentation, if you have a question, type it into the Q&A box and we will get to them at the end of the session. So I'd like to introduce our guest speakers first. We have two guest speakers, Meenakshi Lamba from Immigrant Services Calgary and Griffin Anderson from Saskatoon Open Door Society. Meenakshi will be presenting first, so I'd like to ask Meenakshi to please turn on your camera. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And I have a short bio. I'd like to introduce Meenakshi to everyone. So Meenakshi Lamba immigrated to Canada in 2002 from India. She started the journey from Toronto, then moved to Prince Edward Island, then to Fort McMurray, and then to Calgary in 2009. Meenakshi worked for oil and gas sectors for Suncor for a long time in supply chain. She then joined Immigrant Services Calgary in 2017 as an employment counselor. Working with immigrants and helping people is very close to her heart as being an immigrant herself. She understands the struggles people go through. Thank you very much for joining us today, Meenakshi.
Thank you so much, Gavin, and thank you so much, Venus, for having me here today. And working with the immigrants is very close to my heart, as I am an immigrant myself. And I understand the struggles that people go through, especially with interviews, because when we come from a different country, the interview process is totally different.
Absolutely.
Can I start sharing my screen now?
Please do.
Thank you. So please let me know when you can see it.
Yep. It looks good here. Awesome. Take it away.
Thank you so much. So I will be talking about the pre-interview tips for the new Canadians. I totally understand what people go through, when you are new to the country and you are preparing yourself for an interview. And on top of that, since the time of pandemic, virtual interviews have become the norm. So people do not know how to do these virtual interviews. What do I do? Like, do I need to dress for the virtual interviews? Yes. So the first tip is prepare like a real interview, dress professionally. Because if you are not going to dress professionally, the interviewer will not feel that you are ready for a professional interview. So always dress professionally. And this is again one more tip. I have seen people, this is what they do. They will wear a nice shirt, but they're wearing their pajamas. And what if like something happens and you have to stand up? So please don't take those chances. Wear pants, not pajamas, because that will help you. So make sure there are no distractions. If you have younger kids at home, if you have pets at home, make sure that you have a spot where you can sit and talk to the interviewer without any distractions. Another tip is, so I actually had a client who got this virtual interview. And when he was interviewing, due to some technical issues, his camera, like he could not see the interviewers on his screen. He was only able to see himself. And he thought, if I'm not able to see them, they are not able to see me, but they were able to see him. And he was getting distracted by something that his children were doing and his wife was cooking. So he was looking elsewhere, which actually spoiled his interview. So make sure that there are no distractions. It's not a noisy place. If you have younger kids at home and you think you cannot do it from home, maybe, pick another spot, go to a coffee shop, which is quieter, or go to a quieter location and then do the interview from there. So check the company website to see how their core values align with your core values. This is very important in Canada. When I think of ISC, Immigrant Services Calgary, I think my core values align with their core values absolutely, because our core values are to unleash the potential of newcomers. And I want to help to unleash that potential of newcomers. So supposing you're applying for a company and their core values are diversity and you are coming from a diverse background, how does that core value align to your core values? You would love to work in a diverse atmosphere, diverse culture, for any company. I would say, like any company here in Canada, the culture is very diverse. The working conditions are very diverse and people come from diverse backgrounds. So that is always a good point to connect to. Your answers should not be rehearsed. It should be coming as a natural thing. It should not feel like, okay, as soon as they say, tell me about yourself, and you just start, it's like, no. Have it connected to the interviewer. So if the interviewer is not getting connected to you, they will not be able to see what value you bring to them. So make sure that it does not feel like it's rehearsed, or you practice way too much. And once you have practiced way too much, it looks like, oh my God, like this is a performance. Okay. It's okay to take a pause. So if they ask you a question and you would like to think about it, it's always good to take a pause. So as a HR professional, I can tell you that, when you take a pause, HR people understand that you are thinking. So that means you are not pre-prepared. You are thinking and answering the question. So they actually like people that take pauses while answering a question. Or you can, if you need time, you can always say, this is a very good question. And this gives you a few seconds to think and collect your thoughts before you present it to them. For virtual interviews, when you're preparing for virtual interviews, record yourself and see if everything looks good. I have advised my clients to do this. So what they do is, I will do a mock interview with them and we record that session. So what they do is, when I ask them a question and they answer it, then we replay that session and see what was okay and what could have been done in a better way. So that always helps you, because virtual interviews are different than in-person interviews. When you're there in person, the connectivity gets different. But with virtual, it is a little bit different. Check the websites like Glassdoor, because Glassdoor has, the people go there and post, say, I had an interview with company ABC, and this is the kind of questions they asked me. So you get a better idea about, what kind of questions that company is asking. So you can actually pre-prepare yourself with those questions. Maintain eye contact. Even though you're on the camera, maintain eye contact. It's very important. So in-person interviews, you do maintain eye contact, but even on the camera, if there is no eye contact, you're not able to connect to the people. If you're not looking at them and, if I start looking elsewhere, I'm fiddling with things here, you will see that you will not be able to connect with me. So to connect better, you need to have good eye contact. And the best way to see if your eye contact is good or not, record yourself. Before the interview, go onto the camera, start a Zoom call and just record yourself. And when you record yourself, you will see if the camera, if your eye contact is proper or not. Because what we do is the laptop cameras are on top of the laptop. But when you are talking to somebody, maybe their picture is showing on the bottom of your laptop. So you start looking at their picture and then you're talking to them, but that actually loses the eye contact. So prepare yourself, record yourself before to see that the eye contact is maintained. Smile and be confident. If you are answering a question and you're smiling, you have won half the battle. When you're smiling, that shows your confidence, that shows that you are willing to connect, you're a team player. So that actually wins a lot of things. So please always smile when you are answering the questions. So for in-person interviews, again, dress professionally, but according to the job that you're applying for. So why I say this, because I worked in Fort Mac at Suncor. So that was the plant site. If you're interviewing for a plant site person, you do not need to dress up in a suit because everybody at plant site wears jeans. So you check, what kind of atmosphere is there. So if everybody wears jeans, then you wear jeans. But if it is a professional job in a corporate organization, then you dress up according to that. Check the company's websites again for their core values. This is very important. So please make sure all their core values, when they ask you about yourself, or the best question to answer this one is like when they say, why should we hire you? So your answers, your core values should connect to their core values. Always arrive 10 minutes before the interview. Not half an hour before the interview, just 10 minutes before the interview. So in case, you're new to the city and you don't know where this place is, a day before, go and check where the place is so that you know how much time it takes you if you're driving or if you're taking the transit, how much time it's going to take you. And then you manage your time that way that you arrive 10 minutes prior to the interview. If you arrive half an hour before the interview, don't go to their office. Hang out at a coffee shop or some other place where you can spend some time and then arrive there 10 minutes before the interview. Check your body posture before going for the interview and maintain the advised postures. So this happens a lot with a lot of people. Sometimes people sit way back from the table. And sometimes some people are all over the table. So both are not right. You need to have the right body posture when you're talking to people, and you need to be conveying things properly to them. So make sure you Google the body postures for interviewing before you go for the interview so that you know that you are sitting in the right posture. Another thing is, sometimes people speak at a pace. Some people speak at a very fast pace. Some people speak at a very slow pace. So both are again not right. You have to maintain the pace at which you're speaking. The pace should be such that it's clear to the other person. And the best way to prepare for all these things is rehearse. You can rehearse in front of the mirror. You can record yourself, rehearse in front of the camera, and that will tell you, if it's correct or not. And as you must be seeing, I talk with my hands. I like talking with my hands, and actually people like talking with their hands. So if you are one of those, you like talking with your hands, it's okay. It's absolutely perfect. You do not need to, hold your hands and tie them somewhere and you're just trying, you're being uneasy. Then you are like, I don't know, what do I do? It's absolutely okay to talk with your hands. Again, it's okay to take a pause, maintain eye contact. So when you are interviewing with maybe a panel of people in person, how do you maintain the eye contact? So this person, the person in center asked you the question. You maintain eye contact with this person? No, you maintain eye contact with everybody. So you keep looking at everybody and then you are talking and responding. Preparing in front of the mirror is the best thing. You can just prepare in front of the mirror and that actually helps you. Prepare at least 2 questions for the interviewer. So at the end of the interview, they will always ask you, do you have any questions for us? Go prepared with at least 2 questions for the interviewer. Take a notebook and a pen, and when they're talking to you, when they're telling you something, take notes. They like it because they know you are really interested in this, you understand what they're saying, and if they are talking about something new, you are taking notes. So you are going to be there. Smile and be confident. Smiling is the winner for all the interviews. So just smile and be confident about the interviews. So that's the end of my presentation, and I have my contact information in here. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn as well if you want. And definitely if there's any help that I can provide, I'm happy to do so. And Gavin has my contact information too. So in case you need my contact info from him, you can ask him for that. Thank you so much, everybody.
Great. Thank you very much, Meenakshi. We will have a Q&A session. So if you did have any questions for Meenakshi, type them in now and we'll get to them at the end of today's presentation. Up next, I'd like to invite Griffin to please turn on your camera. Awesome. How's it going, Griffin?
Not too bad.
All right, so a little bit about Griffin. Griffin Anderson is an employment counselor of the Saskatoon Open Door Society. Born, raised, and educated in Saskatoon, Griffin received his undergraduate degree and JD from the University of Saskatchewan. He has a particular academic interest in labor and employment law. Thank you very much for joining us, Griffin. We're all looking forward to your presentation. So if you, without further ado, you can share your screen.
Awesome. Thank you, Gavin. Happy to be here. So hopefully you can all see my screen now.
Yep, take it away.
Awesome. All right. So today I'm going to be sharing some information and tips on how to succeed during your interviews. So I'd like to say this information will apply largely whether you're in an in-person interview or whether you're doing a remote interview. Okay, so let's get started. Unsurprisingly, throughout your interview, you're going to be evaluated on how well you respond to questions. Employers are going to use your answers to determine how competent you are for the job, how likely you are to be able to contribute to the organization immediately if you're hired, and how well you're going to fit in with their employment culture and their internal teams. But they're also going to be evaluating you on other factors as well, not just your answers. They're going to look at or evaluate you based on your physical appearance, your confidence level, and how prepared you appear to be. So make sure that you're properly dressed, you have all the documents you might need at hand, and have a notepad and a pen ready with you as well. And of course, you're likely to be quite nervous, and that's okay. Just do your best to appear confident and friendly. So in order to make a strong, courteous first impression, ensure that you arrive 10 minutes early to the interview. This applies even if you're interviewing remotely. Platforms like Zoom will put you into a waiting room as soon as you arrive, and the interviewer is going to be able to see when you're in that waiting room. They're not going to let you in right away. So avoid also arriving excessively early, like 10 to 15 minutes. Is more than enough. When you do arrive, whether it's in person or over Zoom, make sure that your phone is on silent. If you're doing an in-person interview, when you enter the building, you're going to need to make sure that you advise the front desk that you're there, whoever's doing reception, and they're going to direct you to where you should wait. Be sure to be polite and friendly to everyone that you meet while you wait. If you're rude to anybody, it's kind of funny that interviewers and hiring managers, they tend to hear about that kind of thing and tend to obviously not want to hire those people. So do your best to be as friendly and approachable as possible to everybody that you come across while you're waiting. When you're in the interview, don't chew gum, don't bring coffee in. It creates a really casual image that's typically not appropriate. And also remember to be patient. If you're waiting for your interviewer to start the interview, maybe they're running a bit late, that's okay. Don't become impatient or upset. They'll let you know when they're ready. You know, they can be late, you can't be. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit professionalism and etiquette during an interview. So the first thing I'll say is that you always need to make sure that you're letting the interviewer finish what they're saying. Let them finish asking the whole question before responding. Do not interrupt the interviewer at any point during the interview. Generally, it's thought of as rude for anyone to interrupt anybody else, but if the interviewer stops you, interrupts you, you need to stop talking. You don't want to be talking over the interviewer or anything, just let them interrupt you. Don't take it personally. And then when you're actually stopping or answering a question, it's okay to stop and think. It's okay to pause before beginning your answer. A few seconds can make a huge difference in how well thought out and coherent your answer is. I always recommend to my clients that you can buy yourself a little bit of time to think without a long silence, simply by restating or summarizing and restating the question back to the employer. So basically, they ask you a question, you summarize that question and say it back to them in a little bit different form. This buys you a bit of time, and it also helps you to internalize what you're being asked. And it makes it a little less likely that you're going to lose your train of thought when you're actually answering the question. So my next point is really, really important. I find that this tends to mess with people when they're in interviews. You need to provide clear, concise responses and then stop once you've said everything you need to say. You don't need to restate or re-clarify anything that you've said unless the interviewer asks you to. Don't misinterpret the interviewer's silence after you finish talking for an indication that they expect you to keep going. You may notice that interviewers will wait a few seconds before asking the next question, and that's okay. You don't have to feel compelled to keep talking. Honestly, if you try to fill in that silence with random things that pop into your head, it's going to hurt your score on that interview. So learn to be okay with there being a little bit of silence. Okay, so verbal communication generally, if you're somebody like me who naturally speaks quite quietly, you're going to have to make an effort to speak loudly and clearly. It's important that you are loud enough to be heard, or obviously the interviewer is going to struggle to understand what you're saying. So remember to speak loudly enough for the interviewer to hear you, and that's going to convey a lot of confidence on your part. You obviously don't want to be speaking loud enough that they feel uncomfortable, but there isn't much point in answering their questions if they can't hear what your answer is. And I know this was mentioned before, but make sure to pace yourself. When we get nervous, it's really, really natural for us to speak quite quickly. So what I suggest to all my clients is that you try to speak more slowly when you're in an interview than you think is actually necessary. Remind yourself that it's okay to take a pause to breathe in and give yourself a chance to think. If you feel like you're speaking too slowly, you're probably actually speaking at a good pace. Our mind is going a lot faster than it normally is when we're nervous. So take a chance or take the time to speak quite slowly. So another issue that I find is that a lot of people think it's really bad to ask for clarification during an interview. Like it's almost like they haven't been paying attention, so they shouldn't have to re-ask a question or ask somebody to clarify. But that's generally not the case. If you don't understand what you're being asked, or you didn't quite hear what was said to you, it's okay to say, I'm not sure what you mean by that. Could you rephrase that question for me? It's better to ask for clarification to an answer or to a question, than to answer a question that wasn't actually asked. Keep in mind too, the person sitting across from you, they might have asked the question incorrectly. They might have not made it clear what they're actually asking you. So it is okay to ask for clarification. Again, I find that restating a summary of the question to the interviewer is a really good way to ensure that you've heard the interviewer correctly. When you restate something to them, they're going to tell you if you're restating it incorrectly, and that means that obviously you misheard them or you didn't understand them, and typically they're going to actually clarify it for you. And finally, if you're unsure of whether you answered a question clearly or not, you can check with the interviewer. You can say, something along the lines of, I hope that was clear. If not, just let me know, I can elaborate or clarify for you. That's okay. You can say things like that. Now we can talk about nonverbal communication. So that would be more or less body language. So again, pay attention to your posture. Make sure you're sitting up straight. Don't hunch your back. But also be mindful not to appear overly rigid. Proper posture is going to convey a lot of confidence. Don't cross your arms. It creates the perception that you're guarded or that you're not really comfortable in the conversation. And then do your best to keep your hands visible. Don't hide them under the desk. Even if you're in a remote interview over Zoom or something like that, don't hide your hands in your lap. And then finally, hand gestures can often be super important to convey points, but try to use them relatively sparingly. Most people will fidget when they're quite nervous, but do your best not to. I find that for me, when I have to give a long talk and I'm feeling nervous, it can help for me to kind of keep my hands somewhat folded in front of me and then move for hand gestures, but that's how I deal with fidgeting anyways. And then finally, as mentioned before, it's really, really important that you maintain proper eye contact. Doesn't matter if it's in person or over Zoom. Eye contact is really important for conveying confidence. So you obviously don't want to be staring directly into the eyes of the interviewer for a long period of time because it conveys aggression, but not looking at the interviewer at all, not making eye contact, it's going to make you look really well, like you lack confidence. And then finally, smile. I mean, not only does it make you look more confident, it makes you look more approachable. You're much more likely to be friendly. You're much more likely to be hired if you look friendly and positive. And honestly, smiling usually helps people just feel a little bit less nervous and a little more comfortable. Okay, so I'm just going to briefly talk about anticipating the questions that you're going to be asked. This is super important to having a successful interview. Ideally, you should have thought out or even perhaps written out some practice answers to common interview questions. You don't have to state your rehearsed answers back verbatim or anything like that. You just want to have the answers in your mind so that you can easily recall and tell a story or explain. You don't want to be thinking of things off the top of your head. Doing that tends to make your answers quite incoherent. But prior to stepping into the interview, you're going to want to know things like what makes you a good hire, what makes you a valuable employee, and what your strengths and weaknesses are as well. Just having thought about these things in advance is going to make much better responses on your part. So I'll give you another example of why it's really important to kind of anticipate the questions you're going to be asked. I find that most interviews, they start off with the interviewer asking the person the same question for the most part. It's usually something along the lines of, tell us about yourself. This is a super open-ended question, and when you have to think of this, think about what makes you special, who you are, why you're a good hire, all these things, and you have to do it off the top of your head. People don't give very strong responses. It's incoherent. The questions or the answer often lacks direction, and often people will talk too much about themselves. Now, the first question that you answer is going to set the tone for the rest of the interview. So if you answer this question poorly at the start, you're going to find yourself struggling to turn the tone of the interview around to make it a little more positive. In contrast, if you answer this question very well because you thought it out in advance, it creates a really strong first impression that's going to last throughout the entirety of the interview. Next, we can talk about what you're going to do at the end of the interview. So after you've finished after you've actually finished the interview and finished answering the questions. So usually, I guess the last thing you're going to be asked is, do you have any questions? As it was mentioned before, you should ask at least a couple of relevant questions to show that you're interested in the position, that you're interested in working for the organization. You can ask things like, what are the next steps of the application process? How long does it typically take to choose a candidate? You can even ask something like, what would your first day on the job look like if I were hired? It's really important that you do that. Interviewers who are interviewees who say, I don't have any questions, it just kind of comes across as you're lacking interest. But once you actually finished everything, I definitely recommend asking the interviewer for a business card, or if you already have their contact information, just confirming that you have the correct information. This is super useful when you go to follow up with them. And then when you're ready to leave, you stand up, you thank each interviewer if there's more than one, preferably by name if you can remember what their names are. And then that's it. Just make sure that you're always smiling and remain positive. Even if you feel like the interview didn't go very well, they often go a lot better than you think they did. And if you kind of look defeated because you think you did poorly, that's not going to help your chances of getting the job. So stay positive even if you think it went badly. And then after the interview, after you've left the premises, you need to send a thank you email to the interviewer, typically within 24 hours. So if you can't reach the interviewer directly, you can send a thank you email to the email address you used to apply for the job, and then ask that it be passed along to your interviewer. But this is why it's really helpful to ask for business cards so you can just reach out to them directly. And then if you want to inquire about the decision of the hiring decision, you need to wait at least a week before asking about the status of your application. So you don't necessarily have to follow up and ask this, but if you do, you need to make sure that enough time has passed. Organizations typically do not make immediate hiring decisions. And then if you do hear back from the employer that you were not chosen, I often find it's beneficial to just kind of send a respectful email to ask, okay, well, what could I have done better? What can I work on so that my future interviews go better? A lot of employers have no issue with providing a little bit of feedback. Worst case scenario, you send that email and they just don't respond to it. You don't really have a lot to lose by asking as long as you're respectful in doing it. And then the last piece of advice I want to give, just generally, is that you need to remember that the interviewer or the interviewers sitting across from you, they're just people. Just be friendly and approachable, and they're going to be friendly and approachable to you in return. Honestly, a lot of people aren't hired for positions necessarily because they're the most qualified candidate, but because there's someone that the interviewer themselves would actually want to work with. So just be personable. Just try to form a connection with that interviewer or interviewers. All right, so that's all I have to say today. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks, Griffin, for the wonderful presentation. Again, if anyone has questions for Griffin, please do type it in the chat or Q&A. We'll get to those questions at the end of today's presentation. We'll also have Griffin's contact information in case you want to reach him out for more details. Up next, I'd like to invite Venus to please turn on your camera. Hi, Venus.
Hi, Gavin, and hi, everyone.
So thank you very much, Venus, for coming on today. Venus will be sharing more information about the Career Loans program. I know we played a short video in the beginning, but Venus will go into a little bit more detail about how Career Loans can help skilled newcomers in Alberta and Saskatchewan. So please, without further ado, Venus, take it away.
Sure, I'm going to share the screen. Can you see it now?
Yep.
Okay.
There we go. All right.
Okay. Thank you for joining us today. And thanks to Meenakshi and Griffin for their wonderful presentation. I will be talking to you about the Career Loans program and how it works. So Career Loans is actually funded by Government of Canada, coordinated by Achēv, and our financial partner is HSBC Bank. So it's a fully virtual service for internationally trained professionals residing in Alberta and Saskatchewan. We provide free career counseling as well as assistance with the access to microloan application. And we guide the internationally trained how to navigate relaunching and getting back to their careers in Canada, or if they are considering alternative careers, we can provide guidance for that. Program features, it's totally free in terms of career counseling and access to the micro loan. The low interest micro loan up to $15,000, referral to local employment services if you need further support, and also guidance to accreditation process and to the correct regulatory bodies, and also advice for alternative careers, as I mentioned. So who is eligible? Internationally trained in regulated or non-regulated occupations and trades, residents of Alberta and Saskatchewan, and for immigration status with service permanent residents, Canadian citizens, and convention refugees. with the minimum Canadian language benchmark of level 5. So once you register for our services, which is free and it takes very short to send a registration online, it's just 1 minute, you have access to our one-on-one counseling session, which is a personalized one-on-one session, as I said. So we discuss, in that session, we discuss your career path and options together. And then we create a personalized action plan for you. And also at that point, if you require further assistance and referral to local employment services, we definitely do that, or any other services that can enhance basically your employability and support you in your journey to relaunch your career. And everything is virtual, is done over phone or platforms like Zoom and Teams. So as I said, once you register for our services, you become a member, and the benefit for that is you have access to our past webinars and live webinars like this one with great guest speakers as we had today, as well as I said, the past webinars, which is, we have tons of webinars with great information. I strongly advise you to register and access those. And also you can access our calendar, our event calendar for your province. So this will show you how the process is, very short and sweet. Basically, once you locate your dream job and you kind of research what is required to get that job, whether a retraining or certification, you just approach us or find us online and register for our program. Then once we get the registration, we get in touch and set up a virtual session with you. In that one-on-one session, we basically go in details, talking to you and getting to know you better. And together we explore the options that you have, that you research, and you wanted to basically, you wanted to weigh which one is right for you. Definitely we can discuss that with you. And should you need further assistance to access the microloan, we can actually do that by preparing an application together and sending it to our financial partner for processing. And like everything else, there is a process to the loan, and we can get into the details. If you need assistance, you can contact me for that. So again, the help is totally virtual. As I said, by phone or through the video conferencing platforms. So in that session, we explore the career path with you, the next steps, and also any referral if you need it. And then we create a personalized action plan, and you get that. You can always refer to that in terms of what is the next step. And then if interested, we can explore the loan application together and prepare it to send it in. So our financial partner is HSBC Bank. The loan is up to $15,000 and the minimum amount is $1,500. It's low interest and currently is at 4.45. The loan repayment can be up to 4 years, and throughout the approval process, and also after you get the loan and you start your training, you get support from us throughout. We follow up with you to see how you're moving forward. Should you need any further assistance, we are here to support. So what can be claimed against the loan? Eligible expenses can be credential assessment, accreditation, training courses, training material fees like books and equipments. And also, if you require to pay for the exam, licensure, membership association, and union fees. So if there is anything else that you like to claim against the loan, please come forward and discuss. We can discuss the options. So the loan process as well is totally free and virtual. There is no in-person appointment. As I said, and it's done over the phone or online platforms. So once you actually register for a service to access our past webinars or to basically go through the one-on-one counseling session, there is no obligation to apply for the loan. I just want you to be aware of that, the loan is there if you need to access it. It is not mandatory. If you go through the career counseling, then you should be signing up for the loan. That is not the case. Here is my contact information. If you have any question, please get in touch. I also have a social media, a Facebook page. Please, you can just send me a friend request. We can exchange information, and I'm here to support. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Venus. So yes, if you have any questions about the Career Loans program as well, please type them into the Q&A or connect with Venus. She'll be happy to speak with you about the program. I'd like to invite everyone to turn their cameras back on as we will now be headed into our Q&A session. And I see we do have a few questions I'm excited to answer. For the very first question, and I think this goes back to when Meenakshi, you were mentioning, and Griffin, you mentioned this as well. It's okay to pause, take time to pause and think. We have a question here asking, well, how much time is acceptable to pause and to think? So maybe if Meenakshi, if you can answer first.
Sure, thank you. So I would say, I go with a 10-second rule. When you say it was a very good question, you have already spent 5 seconds and you spend 5 more seconds taking a pause. And those 10 seconds give you the time to collect your thoughts and present your answer. Griffin, you might have a different view. Go ahead.
No, I agree with that completely. You have to take into account the time it takes you while you're speaking, but yeah, 10 seconds is probably around the right time.
Fantastic. Another question. So now that we use face masks in sort of our normal way of life, how will the interviewer know if I'm smiling or not, or read my facial expressions? Can you maybe provide some insight into that? Maybe Griffin, you can start first this time.
Yeah, for sure. Humans naturally smile with their eyes. So people will naturally be able to tell when you're smiling, even if your mouth is covered. It's also how we tell when people are kind of giving you sincere smiles as well. You're smiling only with your mouth, but your eyes aren't really affected. So don't worry. People will innately be able to tell that you're smiling. That you won't really have to do anything special.
Meenakshi?
Yeah, that's why I have a face mask here. So when I'm saying something, so you ask me how I am, and I say, I'm good, thank you. Or I say, I'm good, thank you. You can see the difference. Even though I have the mask on, you can see that, as Griffin said, the smile reflects from your eyes. Smile also reflects in your tone. When you're smiling and talking, even when you're talking to somebody over the phone and you're smiling, it reflects.
So it seems like as long as you're sincere about the way you're feeling, you shouldn't need to worry about whether or not you're wearing a mask. It should come through. Wonderful answers. Up next, we have a question, and maybe Meenakshi, you can take this one first. Can you please give an example of how to restate an interview question? I guess if you're not too sure how to answer a question, how would you go about asking them to restate it?
So usually you can actually ask them to repeat the question if you want. But you can also say, I'm just trying to reiterate to see if I understood the question correctly. I think this is what you asked me. And if it was a different question, then they would say, no, this is not what I meant. I meant this. Or they might say, yes, this is the question that I asked. So that also gives you an opportunity to say the question again, repeat the question, what they have said, and then confirm it with them.
Griffin, anything else to add?
No, I agree. That's exactly how I would do it as well.
Yeah, I think that the key is not to be afraid. If there is any form of miscommunication, just be honest and ask. There's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly.
Great answers. The next question. Can you please explain a bit more about how to form a connection with the interviewer? Griffin, if you have any insights, if you can go first.
Yeah, sure. Honestly, I think the easiest way to form a connection with an interviewer is just how you form a connection with anybody that you're meeting for the first time. Again, they have a lot of power over you in terms of determining, whether you're going to be hired or not, but they're just people too. So be sincere, be positive with them. You're not expected to be a robot who spits out answers. You're having a conversation. They just happen to be asking you questions and you're answering them. So just focus on the kind of humanistic aspect of it. Have some empathy for them. Recognize that honestly, they're probably quite nervous about interviewing you too, especially if they're not particularly experienced interviewers. So I find if you treat them like a person, you won't have any issues forming a connection with them at all.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Meenakshi, anything else to add?
No, I totally agree to this, and just be confident. I think when you're confident and you connect, you automatically connect with people when you're confident. When you're, just don't take it as an interview, take it as a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
As Griffin had mentioned in his presentation, the person interviewing you is also another human being, right? So you just connect with them as a human person.
Absolutely. A few people are asking about this, so we'll get it all lumped in together. How do we answer the interviewer when we ask the question about our weaknesses? What are our weaknesses? Maybe Meenakshi, if you want to take this one first.
Sure. So the weakness that you talk about has to be something which is not going to affect the position that you're taking. And also you will need to tell a positive aspect about that, saying, I'm working on this and I'm here. So supposedly you're saying my weakness is I go into too much details of everything. So I'm trying to overcome my weakness by working on getting less into details and getting more into a bigger picture thing. Like whatever you think your weakness is, the outcome needs to be positive. It should not be something you cannot say, you know what, I think this is what a lot of people say. They say, I'm a workaholic. I work like 16 hours in a day, but that's totally wrong, because that shows that, you do not have that family and work balance. So even if you're a workaholic, you can say, I was a workaholic, I'm working on it. I used to work like 16 hours a day, but now I'm making my schedules and I'm blocking my calendar so that, I do not do this that often.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Griffin, anything else to add?
No, I think I agree largely with that. That's exactly how I would answer it. When they ask you that question about what your weakness is, they do genuinely want to know what you're not strong at, so that you can demonstrate that you are able to assess yourself and say that I'm not good at this, but also to demonstrate to them that you have the ability to overcome it, that you're trying to make yourself better. Usually what I give for an example, if I'm asked that in an interview, is I would say something like, well, typically like through school, I was a terrible procrastinator. So to try to get around that, I make lists and soft deadlines for myself that I have to meet in advance, because it shows that I know I procrastinate and I'm trying to do something about it. Anything that has a negative answer to it, an answer that maybe isn't very flattering, you always need to find a way to turn it into a positive. So.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. This one seems to be a question for Venus, and you mentioned one of the criteria for the Career Loans program is having a Canadian benchmark of level 5. Can you maybe talk a bit more about what is the Canadian benchmark level you're talking about?
Yes, so this is actually set by the ESL programs. So it is basically showing that you can communicate. If you go to a training program, you can communicate, you can understand, you can follow direction. So basically it is that level that you can enroll in a training program and basically move forward and be successful.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Great.
I can add something to this. So Canadian language benchmark is the English test that newcomers go through. And for taking the English test in Calgary, the only facility is with Immigrant Services Calgary. You can contact ISC and book an English test, and they give you results based on reading, writing, listening. And the benchmarks are from 0 and they go up to 12. So they can give you whatever benchmark you qualify for. So for this program, you have to have at least benchmark 5 in all reading, writing, listening, because if you are applying for a professional job and you have low level of English, it gets difficult.
Absolutely, absolutely. Moving on, Matt, wow, we have a ton of questions, so we might be going a bit past over 1 o'clock, but thank you everyone for, if you have questions, keep them coming. And thank you to both Meenakshi and Griffin. We're going to go a bit past schedule, but there are tons of great questions here. All right. So the next question, if I don't know how to answer a question, how do I respond to it? Meenakshi, if you want to take this one first.
So I would say when you're preparing yourself for the interview, you're preparing yourself with the questions. So you would know how to answer that question. Maybe you do not understand that question, then you can ask them to rephrase it or ask it in a different way. But I don't think there will be a question that you will have no response to, because the questions, the Canadian style interview questions are more behavior type questions, and they're looking for stories. So you definitely have stories from past experience, and it's always a good idea to prepare yourself beforehand. That's why we did the pre-interview prep session, because you need to prepare yourself. And if you have an employment counselor, whether it's with our organization or any organization, you can ask them to book a mock interview with you, which is always very helpful because that prepares you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Griffin, anything else to add about whether or not, if you're asked a question and you don't know how to answer it?
I will say that I've done a lot of interviews, and I think only one time has it come up where I didn't have an answer to a question. And that was largely actually the interview for this position, because my background was not at all related to the question they asked me. So my background is in law, and the interviewer asked me, what is your preferred academic perspective on counseling? So like, what is your preferred academic theory? I have zero background in that. But I tried to use it as an opportunity to kind of show that I didn't know what I was willing to learn. So my response was simply, I'll be honest, I don't have a background in social work, so I don't have an answer to that, but I am more than happy to research it and get back to you on that, if that's something you would like. I just tried to use it as an opportunity to maybe show a bit of humility. But really, if you're quite well prepared and you're applying in either an entry-level field or a field that you are professional in, you probably will not have any questions you cannot answer.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Great responses. Griffin, to bounce back to you again, this next question. How do you answer the question about salary?
Okay, so that is a tricky one. Often I have found that interviewers will ask you, like, what are your salary expectations for this position? A lot of my newcomer clients often think that is an opportunity to kind of like negotiate, but it's not. Honestly, the only thing that you can do is just kind of research what that position actually pays. So you might have to go to Glassdoor, you might have to go to Indeed, and you have to find, what is the pay range for that position. They're not looking for the person who will do it for the cheapest, and they're just looking for someone who kind of has an understanding of what this job actually pays. So I always recommend that you look up and find what the range is. So if it pays, you want something like, if it was between $70,000 and $80,000 a year, you want to say between $70,000 and $80,000 a year. And you don't have to say something like, I expect to be paid in this area. Just say, well, the research I did on what the average pay is for this position in Saskatoon or Calgary or whatever is about this amount between X and Y. So I would imagine that your pay is somewhere in there as well. It's basically just an opportunity to show that you've done your research and not really much else.
Mm-hmm. Meenakshi?
Yeah, no, I agree to what Griffin said, because giving a range is always good. Do not give a fixed number. Don't say, I want 80K. Just say 70 to 80, because that gives you an opportunity to negotiate or maybe they might be willing to pay 80, but with your experience, they might think, I am only willing to pay 75 here. And if you are stuck on 80, then they will not come back with an offer. So always give a range.
Mm-hmm. Great, fantastic. I think this next question is for Venus. I have an open work permit. Can I apply for a grant to join some of the classes to get certification? So maybe if you can just talk more about the eligibility criteria.
Yes. So the three immigration status is basically PR and Canadian citizens and convention refugees. Now, if like we don't need to check the work permit, as long as you can show us one of these documents, we can go ahead for the loan application. But further down, probably the educational institution may ask for that. But at the stage that I am working with you, one of the three that I mentioned, one of the three documents confirming the status is okay.
Mm-hmm. And I want to give a chance for our guest speakers to also plug their organizations as well. So, well, Meenakshi first. So, who's eligible for Immigrant Services Calgary, or if you want to talk a bit about that as well?
Absolutely. So we serve people on permanent resident status as well as refugees. And we help them with settlement and employment related resources. We also have the English testing facility, and we have a lot of other programs. We also have some programs that cater to Canadian citizens, but our employment program caters only to PR and refugees. Mm-hmm. If you are, as you mentioned, somebody who mentioned that they are a work permit holder, so that means they do not have their PR status yet. You can contact some other agencies. If you're in Calgary, Prospect takes in work permit holders and they help them. So even if you contact us and you say you need help, we will refer you to another agency if we cannot help you.
And Griffin, if you want to talk about the criteria, eligibility criteria for SODs?
It's quite similar. We basically help anyone who isn't a Canadian citizen. So, and if we're not able to help you, obviously we have more than just employment. We have settlement counselors, people here to help you with your day-to-day life as well. But if we are not able to help you, then we also will refer you to the proper place. So the only issue is it has to be Saskatchewan. We're funded largely by the provincial government, so we don't really operate outside of Saskatchewan. Mm-hmm. But if you're within Saskatchewan and you're coming to Saskatchewan and you need assistance, you're welcome to come ask. And if we aren't able to help you, we'll point you in the direction of somebody.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
So we help people that are in Alberta, but since the pandemic hit, the situation has changed immensely because all our services have become online now. So we are serving people who are in other parts of Canada too, till the time they are a PR and they have, they would want to move to maybe Alberta and they are looking for a future in Alberta because all our resources are connected to Alberta.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Moving on to the next question. Thank you for that, Meenakshi and Griffin. Moving on to the next question. If we're talking about an in-person interview, if I'm offered a drink, should I accept it? Your thoughts, Meenakshi?
I would say yes. So if they ask you, do you want tea or coffee? That's the courtesy in Canada. They will always ask you, and maybe you can say, oh, I can get some water. Even if you don't drink tea or coffee, you can say, I can get some water, because that's a polite way of accepting what they're offering you. Griffin, you can give your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with that answer. You don't necessarily even have to drink it. You can just politely accept it. If you are planning, if it's going to be a long interview, you're probably going to want at least some water or something, just to kind of keep your throat in good condition.
All right. This next one is for Griffin. So we're talking about virtual interviews. Is it really good enough to arrive 10 minutes early, or should 5 minutes early be more suitable when there is a waiting to start for the host, when you have to wait for the host to start?
Honestly, I suggest 10 minutes, simply because if you run into some kind of technical difficulty where you can't actually join immediately, maybe the link is incorrect or something, you're going to need a little bit of time to send an email or contact them, or maybe you're running Zoom, having changed your webcam over, plugged it into a different port, it might change which camera it's going to decide to use, which speaker it's going to use. If you run into any kind of tech issue, you need that time to deal with it. So I suggest 10 minutes. Oftentimes they'll let you in early if they're like ready to go. So, but 5 to me seems like it would be cutting it a little bit close. So.
Meenakshi, this next question is for you. So we're all immigrants, or a lot of our audience today are immigrants, newcomers. Do I have to apologize for my English if it's not clear or if the pronunciation's not good?
I don't think so. Canada is very diverse and people come from all parts of the world to Canada, and people understand that people have different accents. I have a different accent. I am an immigrant too. And I do not apologize for my English to anyone because I speak 4 other languages. So that's the benefit that I have. And if you think that they do not understand what you're saying, then you can say that maybe, you know, I have a different way of speaking, or I have a different accent. So if you're not able to understand, let me know if you feel that they are not able to follow what you're saying. But if they are able to follow what you're saying, then there's no need.
Absolutely. A few more questions coming in, but we are getting to the end.
Sorry, I wanted, if you don't mind, I want to add
Venus.
something to that, to what Meenakshi said. Accent shows that we have something extra. It doesn't show that we lack anything.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Griffin, this one's for you. How can I test my English in Saskatchewan? Do you have any, can we do it at SODS? Is there any place you can recommend?
For us, we go through our Newcomer Information Center, which is kind of a branch of Saskatoon Open Door. So you can contact, if it's easier for you, you can contact Saskatoon Open Door, and then we can refer you to the Newcomer Information Center, which we just call NIC. Or alternatively, you can just look up Newcomer Information Center. They are the ones that do most of the English testing for us. We don't actually, in the employment services, you can do it. But yeah, it's very, very simple.
Yeah. And I assume Meenakshi, likewise in Calgary, your organization, Immigrant Services Calgary, can provide these kind of recommendations as well.
Yeah, so actually the only testing facility is with us. So when they contact us, we book them in for the English testing, and then based on their results, some people want to take English classes, so they are referred to English classes, and then they take English classes to increase their levels.
Great. This question is for Venus about the microloan. Can we access the microloan without working if we're not working now?
Right. If there is household income, definitely. If you're single and you're not working, it's hard, it's tough. But if you're not working, but you have household income that can support the loan, definitely. Yes.
Great. And another question, Griffin, I'm going to pass this to you first. Any suggestions on how to ace a phone interview when you can't see the other person?
It's a good question. Yeah, phone interviews are a little bit trickier because you don't get to read their face. You don't, you obviously can't see them. But I recommend you treat it just the same as a remote interview over Zoom or an interview in person. My biggest advice on that is smile a lot, even if you're, they can't see you. It will come across in your voice. It will change how you respond to things. Also, I still suggest don't do a phone interview in sweatpants and a t-shirt. Like, dress up for it. Your mind will be primed to give more formal answers if you are treating it formally. If you roll out of bed in your pajamas, pick up the phone and start the interview, it's probably not going to go as well as if you take the time to put some formal clothes on and treat it seriously. But I think the biggest one is just make sure you're smiling a lot.
Getting into that right mindset, right? Meenakshi, anything to add about that, the phone interviews?
No, I think Griffin said it. The only thing I want to add here is, so I've seen this with a lot of people. They apply for multiple jobs at multiple companies. They might be applying for like 10 jobs at the same company. And when the interview call comes, they forget which job it was and what resume they submitted and what was the details that they gave in. So my suggestion to you is, when you apply for a job, make a spreadsheet. Put the date you make the application for, paste the job description in one of the cells, hyperlink your resume in there. So when the interview call comes, you can just go and open the resume that you applied with, and you have it in front of you, and then you can answer the questions based on the resume that you have there.
Great, fantastic. Venus, this one is for you. So it's about the loan. Should it be paid right after I finish the training or when I get a job? So I guess they're asking about when the loan repayment period starts.
Sure. The repayment usually starts 30 days after the money is dispersed. So basically 1 month after you get the loan, you start repaying the loan back. So if you go for the full amount, which is $15,000, then the repayment period is going to be up to 4 years. If you go for less, then the repayment period is going to be less. So, but definitely monthly payment is required while you are actually going through the training. And yes, so that's the case.
Thank you, Venus. This is a follow-up question for Griffin about finding a place to test your English. So I don't live in Saskatoon. How can I find a place in SK? If you could just reiterate a bit on that.
Honestly, that's a good question. I don't have a super good answer for you. So what I would recommend you doing is contacting the Newcomer Information Center. They're very, very good at figuring out where you need to go to get whether it's language assessments or anything in your own life. That's kind of what they do. They're kind of the gateway. So I would contact them and ask them that, because off the top of my head, I don't know.
All right. Thank you very much. One last question. I hope, I think this is the last one. I love the questions. I love the interactivity with today's audience. We are past our scheduled 1 hour block, but thank you again, Griffin and Meenakshi, for staying with us, sticking with us and answering all these questions. I think this would be the last question. Networking question. Who or what departments will be good to connect with on LinkedIn regarding the position in the organization? If I get the connection refused, would it be good to connect with other people? So I guess it's more of a networking. Well, like how would you approach this whole LinkedIn advice? Meenakshi, if you could go first.
Sure. So networking is your net worth here. In Canada, if you do not have good network, you don't have anything. Even if you interview for 10 positions, most of the times it depends on how good your network is when you're applying for the job. But your networking has to be done before that position shows up. If a position shows up and then you start networking with people, people will not accept it. You have already made the application and then you want to know, that's not what they want. So maybe make a target, maybe target 10 companies, that these are the companies that always post positions that match my skill set. Start networking with people in those organizations before the positions show up. So once you have met somebody for a virtual coffee chat, virtual coffee chats are really in these days. So when you have met somebody for a virtual coffee chat, say like 3 or 4 times, and they are comfortable, talking to you and a position shows up, they're happy to put in a referral for you. But when you already have the position, you made the application, then you connect with somebody on LinkedIn and say, can you put in a referral for me? They will not do that. So please start building your network before anything else.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Griffin, any other LinkedIn tips?
No, the only thing I would maybe add is if your connection gets refused, I don't necessarily know that means you should try to connect with other people. You should definitely do it in advance, but just because maybe that person doesn't connect with everybody, maybe they only connect with people they know well or something like that. So you might have to look to a couple of different people in the HR department because it is their own personal social network, right? So.
Absolutely. We did get one more question. Griffin, this one's for you. How do I talk about my current salary if I'm asked about it? And is that a common thing for interviewers to do?
I don't think it is. It's not very common unless you're like maybe applying like within your field that you've been in already and you're applying to another company. But if you're working a job, say it's like an entry-level survival job, and then you're applying into your career position, they're not going to ask you about your salary because they're not comparable. I could give you an example of when they might ask you. It would be like if, say, you were a lawyer and you worked for this firm for 5 years, they might ask you about what your salary is or what they're paying for billable hours and so on if you're going to another firm, because maybe they're wondering, are you coming here because it's an increase in salary? Or are you coming here because you don't like the place you're at? But it's not a common question at all. So I don't anticipate most of you would ever be asked that.
Mhm. Would you recommend answering honestly?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you cannot lie. If for whatever reason they do ask you about your current salary, even if you think it's not relevant, you must tell them the truth. You cannot lie about it or embellish it or anything like that.
And the follow-up question, so if an employment staffing organization is asking for your SIN number, this person is asking any ideas about any comments about that?
Yeah, I can answer that. Yes, you should be very wary about giving your SIN number out to anybody. But I will say, an organization like Saskatoon Open Door, we do have to report our work to the government, whether that's the provincial government or the federal government. And the only way that we can do that is to have your SIN number and your FOSS number on file. So during the pandemic, it was much more common to try to get it remotely because we couldn't have people in the office, which was an issue in itself. So a lot of people were very skeptical about that. But if it is a legitimate government organization that you know is legitimate, that you know exists, at some point they're probably going to ask for that SIN and that FOSS number, because the government wants to know that you are in fact a unique individual, not some made up person. And we need to have, say 1,000 clients or something in a year that we need to assist. We can't be making up those numbers. We need a solid way to say this person who has this unique identifier was helped for 50 hours over the course of a year. And if we don't have that, we don't get funded. So you will be asked, but if anybody ever calls you over the phone and you're skeptical, is this a legitimate organization or something? Basically, if you haven't reached out to them first, don't give your SIN out.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, great advice. This question is for Venus, but we did answer this. We did touch on this earlier. If you're not working, does that mean I'm not eligible to access the loan? And like Venus said, it depends on case by case. If you have other dependents in your family who can pay, it really is a case by case. And I do recommend getting in touch with Venus to talk about your specific situation. Venus, is there anything else you would like to add?
No, actually you said it very well. Yes.
Awesome. That's it for today's question. Thank you very much, Griffin.
I would just like to, sorry, Gavin, I would just like to give one more tip, which I want to give to everybody. When you're doing video interviews, usually people make notes on a notebook and then they start reading from their notes, when the interviewer is asking the questions, and that way you lose eye contact. So my little tip is make your notes on stickies and stick them on top of your laptop. So even when you're reading those notes, you're not losing the eye contact because camera is right on the top.
Amazing tip. Amazing tip. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for joining us today, sticking with us. I know we're a bit over our 1 hour mark, but it was so much useful information. Before we end off, I just do want to conclude today's webinar. Let me share my screen for 1 sec. So we do have an upcoming webinar. I'll go full screen. Our next webinar with Career Loans is titled Back to School in 2021 on Thursday, August 19th at 12 p.m. Saskatchewan time. This one is more in line with Saskatchewan. I know we have tons of Calgary participants, Alberta participants here. You are invited to come to this one, but we'll be talking about back to school in 2021, featuring speakers from the University of Saskatchewan and Regina. Last but not least, I want to share everyone's contact information once again. Career Loans, if you're in Saskatchewan, there is a toll-free number there, and info@careerloans.ca. If you want to get in touch with Venus, that's the Career Loans Alberta number, and the second number, that is a toll-free number. Meenakshi and Griffin, we have both their emails and their websites listed below. I will be sending out a follow-up email with a recording of this interview with everything, so you don't need to go scrambling writing all this down. But thank you again for joining us at today's webinar. Meenakshi, if you can come back on, we'd like to say our final goodbyes. Thank you so much. I'm sure the audience found this webinar very useful, and thank you, both of you, for taking the time to share this wisdom and this important information. Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank you
having
for
me.
having us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.